Welcome to our daily reflection for this Thursday, April 25th. And this is the feast of St. Mark the Evangelist. And one of the things I'm really excited about Mark's Gospel is that the Augustine Institute and our scripture professors have done a fresh, new, vibrant translation of Mark's Gospel, which you can find on Catholic.market. And or just go to the Augustine Institute website. It's a great, great translation that's very, very accurate and really beautiful. And I'm really excited about that translation. In fact, the Augustine Institute and our faculty, we are working on a whole new translation of the whole Bible, but we have Matthew and Mark that are out already. And so on this great feast day of St. Mark, we celebrated. He shared the good news. And what we get in the first reading today is from St. Peter's epistle. And this reading from the very end of Peter's first letter. And you're like, well, why do we get a letter from Peter on this feast day of Mark? Because at the end of that letter, as you'll see at the end of the first reading, Peter mentions that Mark greets them and that Mark is with Peter in Rome, in Babylon, right? Babylon being code for Rome. And so that Mark is with him, and he calls Mark his spiritual son. And so it's a beautiful connection between Peter and Mark, or also known as John Mark. And so that's a beautiful connection with Mark as we think about it today. And you know, what's the theme that Peter emphasizes in his reading is one that Mark really lived and embodied ultimately in his life, and that is humility. So he tells us to clothe ourselves with humility in our dealings with one another. And you know, Mark worked as Peter's basically assistant and translator. And then before that, he worked for St. Paul. So Mark kind of, he's not a dominant player. He gets a lot of assists. He's kind of someone who's helping out and behind the scenes. And so even Mark's gospel that he writes was really the preaching of Peter. And then he writes it down. And so Mark is an assistant, but then he gets great glory and he gets his own feast day. And at the end of this reading, Peter tells us if we're faithful to God, God will call us into his eternal glory. And we can see that God is glorifying Mark by giving him an honor and his own feast day. This great disciple who spent his ministry always as a number two, not a number one kind of guy, right? He was always helping others, overshadowed by the Apostle Paul, overshadowed by the Apostle Peter. And yet Mark just loved Jesus, he loved others, and he served. And now God raises him up and exalts him on this great feast day. Isn't that a beautiful sign? And it should give us encouragement that we too, who serve God, maybe behind the scenes and in so many hidden ways, God notices that and God will reward that in his own time. But what we must pursue is humility, because Peter goes on and says, God opposes the proud, but bestows favor on the humble. So humble yourselves, right? Humility frees us to love. The more we have pride, the less we have charity. The more we have humility, the more we have charity. And so when you're proud, you get offended easily. You get angry more easily. But the more you are humble, the more slowly you get angry or impatient or irritated. And the quicker you are to charity and to forgiveness. And so let us persevere in humility and think of St. Mark as the model for that today. May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.